What if the guitarist who powered Frankenstein built the perfect American heavy metal band, then destroyed it himself? A frontman discovered driving a dump truck, 2 albums that blueprinted Van Halen's sound. Then a newspaper compared the singer to Robert Plant, and the bandleader snapped, fired in the back of a car in Paris. The discipline that forged legends became the cage that destroyed them. This is Montrose, the band that imploded at the exact moment they should have ruled the world. Denver, Colorado, late 1960s. While most guitarists were content to jam in garages and dream of stardom, Ronnie Montrose was taking a different path. He wasn't interested in being another blues rock hotshot chasing the British invasion. He was building something else, a reputation as a craftsman, a session professional who could adapt to any style and deliver precision under pressure. His early work reads like a masterclass in versatility. He provided the melodic drive behind Van Morrison's Wild Night on the 1971 album Tupelo Honey. He explored the fringes of jazz with Herbie Hancock. He even contributed to experimental electronic projects with Beaver and Krause, proving he could handle atmospheric textures and rhythmic complexity that most rock guitarists wouldn't touch. This wasn't ego, this was discipline. For those who grew up admiring technical proficiency and old-school work ethics, this stage of Ronnie's career represents the pinnacle of the guitar hero as a disciplined artisan. He viewed the guitar as a tool for precision, not just a vehicle for volume. Before we continue, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. But session work, no matter how prestigious, has limits. You're always serving someone else's vision. And by 1972, Ronnie Montrose was ready to build his own. The transition came when he joined the Edgar Winter Group. Edgar Winter, having moved away from his soul rock outfit White Trash, needed a guitarist with star quality. Someone volatile, unpredictable, fiery. Ronnie fit perfectly. He contributed the iconic, chilling riffs to Frankenstein and the high-energy drive of Free Ride on the massively successful album They Only Come Out at Night. Winter later described Ronnie as Mr. Unpredictable, a man who brought spontaneity and a rock and roll attitude to the stage. But that same unpredictability and burgeoning ambition made it clear Ronnie wouldn't be a permanent sideman. By early 1973, despite the commercial success, he made his decision. He was leaving to build his own vision, a band that would be tight, heavy, and uncompromising. He wanted to move away from Edgar Winter's sprawling arrangements and towards something more concentrated. Pure riff-based power, no keyboards, no horns, just guitar, bass, drums, and a voice that could cut through a wall of amplifiers. The vision was clear. Now he needed the right people to execute it. Finding the right musicians wasn't about searching the clubs or holding auditions. Ronnie Montrose was methodical. He knew exactly what he needed. Young, hungry talent that could be molded into a cohesive unit under his direction. For bass, he recruited Bill Church, his former colleague from the Van Morrison sessions. Church was solid, reliable, someone who understood Ronnie's standards. For drums, he found Denny Kermassi, a powerhouse player from the soul rock project Sweet Linda Divine. Kermassi's style was characterized by mechanical precision and an ability to maintain a heavy, relentless beat that would anchor Ronnie's soaring riffs. But the real miracle, the discovery that would define everything, came from the San Francisco Bay Area cover band scene. In 1972, Sammy Hagar was struggling. His previous band had fallen apart due to drug-related arrests of his bandmates, leaving him destitute. To support himself, he was driving a dump truck for his father-in-law. But despite these setbacks, Hagar remained a fixture in the local music scene, playing cover bands and developing a reputation for high-energy performance and a vocal range that could shatter glass. The meeting between Hagar and Montrose is the stuff of rock legend. Ronnie had seen Hagar performing and was struck by his firecracker energy. Hagar, having seen Ronnie perform with Edgar Winter, was equally impressed. When Hagar discovered they lived just 2 miles apart, he knocked on Ronnie's door. Picture this scene: a struggling singer with a notebook of lyrics, standing in front of a session professional who just left one of the biggest bands in America. Hagar played him early versions of Bad Motor Scooter and Make It Last, songs he'd written only a week prior. Ronnie's response was immediate: "You've got a deal." The chemistry was instant. Hagar brought the raw, unpolished energy. Ronnie brought the discipline and the industry connections. The group made their public debut on April 21, 1973, with a 45-minute radio broadcast on FM's Tom Donahue show. The broadcast, recorded at the record plant in Sausalito, showcased a band that already sounded remarkably polished and explosive. This wasn't a garage band finding their sound. This was a professional operation from day one. Ted Templeman, the producer who'd worked with Ronnie on the Van Morrison sessions, heard the broadcast and recognized the future of American rock. He helped secure a record contract for the band, and suddenly, Montrose had the resources to make their vision real. When the self-titled Montrose album was released in October 1973, it represented a seismic shift in American music. At a time when British bands like Led Zeppelin and Deep Purple were the standard bearers for heavy music, Montrose delivered an 8-song collection that felt more direct, punchy, and modern. The sonic identity was forged through innovation. Ronnie primarily used a Gibson Les Paul run through a Fender Bandmaster amplifier and an Electro-Harmonix Big Muff fuzzbox. This setup produced a saturated, thick tone that maintained clarity, a sound that some critics would hail as the first American heavy metal album. Ted Templeman's production philosophy was essential. He preferred a dry, in-the-room sound that highlighted the interplay between the 4 musicians. The album was recorded quickly, capturing the raw chemistry of a band that had barely gigged together before entering the studio. For listeners who discovered this album late at night on FM radio, these tracks became sacred. Rock the Nation opened with a blazing sound and heavy cowbell work from Carmassi. Bad Motor Scooter became one of the most famous motorcycle-themed songs in rock history, with Ronnie using his guitar to mimic the sound of a revving engine, a trick that became a staple of their live show. Then there was Space Station No. 5, a proto-metal epic that combined sci-fi lyrics with aggressive tempo shifts. Ronnie utilized a joystick-like device on his guitar to create distorted space-age sounds that reacted to the heat of his hand. It was innovative, theatrical, and unlike anything else on American radio. But the song that would define their legacy was Rock Candy. That slow, stomping riff became a template for arena rock anthems. It was the sound of American hard rock finding its identity, not trying to be British blues, not trying to be psychedelic, just pure, unapologetic power. The album closer, Make It Last, featured Hagar's raw vocal performance and chord progressions that a young guitarist named Eddie Van Halen would later cite as a foundational influence on his own style. Despite the album's brilliance, the record label didn't know what to do with Montrose. They already had the Doobie Brothers for mainstream rock and Deep Purple for hard rock. They viewed Montrose as redundant and didn't put the full weight of their marketing machine behind the debut. The album peaked at number 133 on the Billboard charts. It was only through relentless FM radio airplay and the band's reputation as a can't-miss live act that the record eventually became a sleeper hit, reaching platinum status over a decade later in 1986. For many fans, this lack of immediate corporate success made the band feel like a best-kept secret, a badge of honor for the dedicated rock listener. Following the debuts release, Montrose hit the road with a vengeance. They opened for some of the biggest names in the industry: Aerosmith, Kiss, Journey, Mott the Hoople. For audiences of that era, seeing Montrose was often an aha moment. They were frequently the band that upstaged the headliner. On September 29, 1973, at Winterland in San Francisco, they opened for Mott the Hoople and Barnstorm. The show became infamous for Hagar's Roger Daltrey-style microphone swinging. He accidentally struck the bass player in the head, causing blood to stream down his face while a roadie wiped it away mid-song. Hagar allegedly never apologized. This was raw, unpolished energy personified. The band's connection to Detroit's Cobo Hall was particularly strong. They performed there in the summer of 1973 with Aerosmith, a show Hagar remembered as the definitive Rock City experience, where the band felt they truly belonged on the national stage. But beneath the sold-out shows and the growing cult following, a fundamental tension was building. Ronnie Montrose, the craftsman who had assembled this perfect machine, was beginning to feel constrained by the very sound he'd created. By 1974, Ronnie had grown weary of being pigeonholed as a heavy metal guitarist. He perceived the one-dimensionality of the hard rock sound as commercially waning and personally unfulfilling. He wanted to prove he was a musician first and a rock star second. This led to a desire to broaden the band's sonic palette to include folk, jazz, more mature compositions. Sammy Hagar felt the opposite. The band was just hitting its stride as a heavy unit. They had momentum. They had an audience. Why change? As the band entered the studio to record their second album, Paper Money, the collaborative spirit that had defined the debut began to crumble. Ronnie, ever the perfectionist, began to assert a level of control that stifled the chemistry that had made them explosive. Hagar recalled that on the second record, Ronnie wouldn't even listen to his songs, choosing instead to look to outside writers or cover material. This led to a fractured album where Hagar and Montrose co-wrote only 4 tracks. The inclusion of covers like Underground and Connection signaled a move toward a more varied and mellow sound. One particular track, I Got the Fire, became a flashpoint. Hagar claimed he wrote the lyrics and melody, but Ronnie initially failed to give him songwriting credit, later telling him he forgot. When Hagar pressed him on the publishing royalties, Ronnie reportedly fired back, "All you care about is the money." This wasn't just a creative disagreement. This was a personality clash at its core, Ronnie's discipline versus Hagar's ambition. The very structure that had made Montrose successful was now suffocating its greatest asset. Ronnie's anti-drug stance also became a point of contention as he began to impose his personal lifestyle choices on the rest of the band. What had once felt like professional standards now felt like control for control's sake. Paper Money reached number 65 on the Billboard 200, the band's highest charting release, but it lacked the singular vision of the debut. For fans who had fallen in love with the raw power of the first album, this felt like compromise. And compromise, in rock and roll, is death. The end didn't come with a long, slow fade. It came suddenly during their 1974 to 75 European tour. For fans who'd been following the band's rise, the news was a shock. They seemed on the verge of superstardom when they simply ceased to exist in their original form. The final straw occurred in Europe, where the press was beginning to take notice of Hagar's powerful stage presence. A Belgian review heralded Hagar as essentially the second coming of Robert Plant. Rather than being pleased that his band had a world-class frontman, Ronnie was reportedly irritated. He felt snubbed as the bandleader. In February 1975, as the band traveled to Paris to prepare for shows at the Olympia Theater, the tension boiled over. In the back of a car, Ronnie turned to Hagar and abruptly told him he was breaking up the band. Hagar was fired shortly thereafter. The dismissal was stunning in its abruptness. No warning, no negotiation, just a sudden end to what could have been the greatest American hard rock band of the decade. Ronnie attempted to keep the Montrose name alive by recruiting vocalist Bob James and keyboardist Jim Alcivar, turning the group into a 5-piece. Warner Brothers Presents Montrose was released in 1975, followed by Jump On It in 1976. Both albums featured a more polished, space funk sound. The band continued to tour with major acts like Rush, Journey, and Kiss, but the magic was undeniably gone. The audience that had fallen in love with the raw power of the debut didn't connect with this new iteration. By early 1977, Montrose quietly disbanded, far earlier than anyone had expected given their initial promise. The irony was devastating. The precision and control that had forged a legendary sound had become the very thing that destroyed it. Though the original Montrose lasted long enough for only 2 albums with Sammy Hagar, their influence on the development of hard rock and heavy metal is disproportionate to their brief lifespan. They provided the definitive American response to the British invasion of heavy music, a red, white, and blue-blooded answer to Led Zeppelin. The most significant legacy of Montrose is found in the DNA of Van Halen. Eddie Van Halen famously described himself as a Montrose freak, and his early style was a direct evolution of Ronnie's big, open-chord approach. Ted Templeman, who produced both bands, used the Montrose debut as a sonic reference point for Van Halen's 1978 debut. Van Halen's early club sets frequently included Montrose covers like Rock Candy and Make It Last. The eventual hiring of Sammy Hagar as David Lee Roth's replacement in 1985 was, in many ways, the ultimate validation of the Montrose legacy. Hagar's solo career, often featuring former Montrose members like Bill Church, kept the band's spirit alive throughout the Red Rocker era of the late 70s and early 80s. Songs like I've Done Everything For You and There's Only One Way to Rock carried the same energy that had defined those early Montrose recordings, but the influence extended beyond American shores. In the United Kingdom, Montrose was highly regarded by the musicians who would form the new wave of British heavy metal. Iron Maiden recorded a cover of Space Station No. 5 in 1992. The band's clean, simple, and high-powered sound remains a gold standard for technical hard rock. All four original members, Ronnie, Sammy, Bill, and Denny, reunited for a one-off recording in 1997 for Hager's Marching to Mars album. It was a moment of reconciliation, proof that time can heal even the deepest wounds. When Ronnie Montrose passed away in 2012, the surviving members joined Neil Schon, Joe Satriani, and others for a special tribute concert, proving that while the band may have imploded, the respect for Ronnie's vision never faded. Montrose proved that the tightest machines can break from internal pressure. They sounded like the future, heavier than the British imports, tighter than anyone on American radio. But the same discipline that forged their legendary sound became the cage that trapped them. Ronnie wanted control, Sammy wanted freedom, and rock and roll, at its best, can't survive in a cage. What's your favorite Montrose memory? Drop it in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more untold stories from rock's golden era.